else to shoot, but I keep winning. No contusions, no regrets, because it's better to be happy than a useless rusty nail. It's all the sixes and verses into the morning I began.
Well, yeah, I mean, the short story is I was a huge fan. I saw the legendary Pink Dots probably 5 or 6 times in the mid-90s, and then I was studying abroad in Germany, living in Cologne in 1996, and they came through on tour, and I snuck into their van. I didn't sneak. I was invited.
That was the old crap van, wasn't it? That old blue thing that kept breaking down, couldn't go.
It didn't break down when I was with you.
To
me, it was a magical rock and roll circus van.
Yeah, I had a different description for it, really. Crap van. Old blue crap van.
Shitty blue van.
Eventually, when we sort of like disposed of it, we were actually renting that thing for quite an exorbitant price, and we found out that sort of like after we finally sort of like, why don't we just get a normal van? That sort of basically the fate of that van was somebody set fire to it. They thought it had been abandoned because it perpetually looked abandoned. And we thought, yeah, why not?
Our first tour van, once we got big enough to bring one crew member and merch with us, we had to upgrade from my station wagon, which was our first touring vehicle. And you could fit, like the Dresden Dolls did entire tours, like 10-date tours in a station wagon, because it was just the two of us.
Yeah.
No sound person. All of Brian's drums, all of, our personal stuff and my keyboard, all just barely crammed in the back of a car.
I know this scenario. We in America, it used to be the RV experience, and we put all the stuff in the shower.
Yeah.
But
this was a car. This was a car meant for passengers.
That's what I call compact.
It was compact. But then, we needed to, once we added a box of T-shirts, that was the end of the car. So Brian was like, let's get a van. So we got a blue van, but it was not a crap blue van. Brian was really good. Brian was the pragmatic, practical one in those departments, and we bought a used Ford Econoline, and we named it Ludwig Van.
Ludwig Van. Oh, God.
Or Ludwig.
At least if you shouted at him, he wouldn't hear you.
So that was the story, and the band actually invited me to come on tour for 3 German tour dates, because I volunteered to be helpful at the merch desk because I spoke German. So they were nice and invited me to come to the next few shows, and they insisted on paying me, which really embarrassed me.
No, why?
Because I felt like I had been adopted into the exciting rock and roll circus. So that was that. That changed my life a little, because I thought I knew a lot about a lot, but I'd never actually been in a, indie band touring backstage situation, because I wasn't, unlike Brian was in punk bands from the time he was 15, and I was never in bands really until the Dresden Dolls. So I didn't know about backstage and about sound check and about line check and
you learn. I mean, I remember our first shows, and we were actually with a bigger agent, believe it or not, in the 80s, and the agent said, have you prepared a rider? And it's just like, what's a rider? And it's just like, and I thought, it must be some old rock and roll talk or something. You know, we're not rock and roll, so we wouldn't know what a rider is, which goes to show what a kind of idiot I was at the time. But it's
What's it called, a rider?
I've no idea.
You should find that
I
out.
have no idea.
We started talking about it, I think, when the Dresden Dolls and the Legendary Pink Dots played together was the first time we talked about it. I don't even really remember
Yeah.
we didn't have some epic conversation. One of us just mentioned, let's collaborate, and we were excited to do it. And then years went by, and we actually nailed a date. I went over to London, and pretty much the second day of collaborating, had to turn around and go back to the States because my friend was dying. And it was really dramatic and tragic.
Very sad.
And I was 7 months pregnant, so it's not like I could just reschedule it for the next month because I was about to head into unknown baby territory. But then pretty much exactly a year after, I came back and we did it. And we basically set aside a month, and we went to Imogen Heap's house, which was near Edward's house.
That's right, yeah.
And we wrote, created, arranged, produced, recorded the whole thing in under a month,
Yeah.
which is a good way to do it, to just like write all the material and then immediately record
It
it.
all becomes connected. It develops a very consistent atmosphere, which is always what I don't like albums that sound very patchy because there's a track from this period and a track from that period. This really had a flow and a kind of like a vibe, if you like. Yeah, we're proud of it. Absolutely.
Some of it.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions in taxi cabs, often about, like Pulp Fiction, for instance, is about a really interesting town near where I live, which basically on Fridays and Saturdays it becomes Sodom and Gomorrah, except God kind of like leaves it alone. But the wreckage in the streets afterwards, well, they clear it up on Monday and it all starts again the next weekend. And this needed kind of recording. It needed preserving as a cultural anomaly. No, not the town. The town should be bombed and wiped out off the face of the earth. But
Someone needs to be the historian before it's gone. Well, the nice thing about... I've never made a record like this, ever, where it was like, get together, come up with a bunch of things really, really fast, and then whatever they are, that's going to be the album, because we were pretty committed to walking out of the experience with an album. So, and I've never written songs like that. I usually just write when I feel like it or as I go, and if I'm only really half satisfied with something, I won't keep working on it. I'll push it aside. And this was actually really like one of the most enjoyable things about it was having to be disciplined and sit there and go like, okay, we have a day, we have this fragment of a song, we're just going to make something out of it, and it has to be good, so we just have to sit here until we're really happy with it.
I'm pretty sure it's the same for Amanda. I've never, ever trusted lyrics I write in the hands of somebody else.
Well, you could have fooled me because you acted so
But
comfortable
it's
about it. I was really inspired.
It's because of my respect for your lyric writing, because you actually made them better. We just basically were pushing the paper across the table. Amanda would sort of like say, hey, I've written this one, and sort of I think, maybe change that line or something. I'd do the same, and some we literally write in tandem, and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful the way, it's like this mixture of daily reality and Twilight Zone sort of, and yet actually occupying the same space like they'd always belonged together.
That's such a hard thing to do as a songwriter, though, because songwriting is so personal and intimate that it's not the sort of thing you want to get into an argument with someone about. So I've always kind of resisted co-writing because, and I'm getting the feeling now, having spent more time with Edward, we really like control.
Oh yeah.
But it's actually kind of a miracle that you managed to put these two control freaks in a room together, and we didn't have one single bust up about
Well, it's mutual
anything.
respect, and we like each other. I mean, is there a better recipe, really? I know what you've written. I've followed your music since, indeed, those cassette tapes in the 90s. I listened to it a lot, so I know what I'm dealing with here.
Yeah, I think that's actually an important part of it, is that we were like fluent in each other's songwriting languages. And so I already know where Edward wouldn't want to go and what wouldn't really sit well with him. And there's this giant Venn diagram in the middle of our songwriting where there's a lot of territory that we could cover. So I just sort of like put myself into character in like, what would a legendary Pink Dots song do that's still within my language and aesthetic, and veer towards those decisions instead of these decisions. You know, if I had been co-writing an album with like Bjork or Katy Perry, which I wouldn't do, but like it's different language, different decisions. And in that way, I actually felt really liberated because I love this music. So I love Edward's music so much that it felt like I was sort of being invited into this secret chamber of songwriting.
It was the same for me. It was like, basically I thought, well, this is something very special for me. Let's forget about controlling every note, every word, things like that. Let's throw myself and open the door here, because why are we doing it otherwise? It's like, and I basically, indeed, I was very happy to relinquish control.
It's because we're old now.
It must be.
Yeah, we're over it.
Must be.
Enough years of control freakiness and we're just like, eh.
Well, there's a lot of wisdom in what you say there.
No, I was only half kidding.
Yeah, it's because control freakiness, it produces a certain stress and certain aspirations that can never quite be realised. Certainly not if you're working with someone. Not even if you're working alone. I find you never quite get there.
Well, and also, I mean, I find the same thing isn't true in relationships, which is like the older you get and the more relationships you're in and the more relationships you see crash and burn, you do start to get the sense that controlling everything doesn't necessarily get you what you want.
No, totally.
You know,
totally
and the connection.
Agree with that.
The connection might be better served by compromise or.
Well, we didn't compromise at all. I thought we absolutely got the album that we wanted, without compromise. But that was the beauty of it, is because of the tuned into the nature we tuned into each other. Everything, we valued each other's opinions, so we weren't afraid to ever voice them. So I wouldn't say it was ever compromise. It was just like, we know where we want to get to, and we're going to get there, but we're going to do it together.
Yeah, there should be a different word for that, because compromise sort of
means you give up something.
Yeah, compromise compromise
like
feels like a negative word,
little,
but it was more like a like a space opening, and as a control freaky songwriter going, I know what the next note is going to be, I know what the next lyric is going to be, allowing even that part of your brain to shut down and go, I'm not even going to try to know, because you might know. That's like its own submissive, creative process that actually makes me feel like a much more mature songwriter than I used to be.
Yeah, same here. I continued, like with the next project, the Tear Garden, I went into it with the same, I'm not going to try and control everything here, and I think it's a better album as a result of it.
Was Kevin really happy?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was really the two of us, again, making an album together, 50-50, that just really best Tear Garden album came out of that, for possibly that very reason.
Sure, those were mostly my department. I work with a lot of the same collaborators. So Chiara Ambrosio is this Italian stop-motion filmmaker, and she volunteered to do a project, so I basically just sent her the album and said, what speaks to you? And she did this sort of beautiful puppet-like video. And then the Clock at the Back of the Cage video came about because I really wanted it to have a video, but I didn't know what. I kind of had a feeling that it would be really well served as like an animated thing or something really dark and small and beautiful, like to match the sound of the song. And I happened to be in Australia over the winter when it was just around the time that we would be making videos, and I ran into these circus friends of mine who had made a little promo for a show they were doing in a giant warehouse where they had this 50-foot space and a huge camera, and they had just played around with a bunch of objects, and I looked at their promo video and went, that. Can you get that same space and that same filmmaker and make a video for me? And they were like, sure. So they sat down with me and I sort of told them what the song was about and how I imagined the video feeling, and then I just let them go crazy with it. And the beautiful thing about the videos too is my Patreon paid for them, because otherwise we wouldn't have had a budget to pay for videos like that. So the Patreon has been one of the like huge gifts of this record, is I'm just drawing on this constant,
It made it possible.
yeah, I'm just drawing on this constant fund of money from the fans to just keep doing more things. Otherwise it would have just been the record, because also there's no label, no like giant piles of capital to spend. So we're webcasting the London show using my Patreon, which means we can get real cameras and really film this tour, which is only going to happen once. I mean, this is it. Me and Edward and Patrick playing this record probably isn't going to happen again. So to really be able to film it and get great sound, and that's been one of the amazing things about the Patreon, is just otherwise where does the money come from? You know, you can't get people to pay for a webcast like that. So I feel really indebted, grateful to those 10,000 people who are giving us dough. We should give Patrick his propers.
We should try and, I don't know where Patrick will be right now. Probably
Frolicking somewhere.
In Leipzig. But he is absolutely the third member of this little band.
Well, and it happened not by accident, but we didn't go into the record process with him on a list. We just started making the record and we went, oh yeah, strings would work. And then Edward just reached out to Patrick, who said yes, and it got bigger and bigger. And
yeah, I mean, could you imagine it without those strings?
Mm-mm. Which also made it so huge for me, because it's especially that era of the Pink Dots that Patrick played in, which was mid-'80s,
yeah,
late 80s.
I mean, I love it that Amanda is singing a couple of these songs as well, like Golden Dawn, and because it really is. It's a new. It's like brought them back to life again in a new way, and for me, it's thrilling to hear it, especially like she does it so beautifully. It really is. I'm moved every time that song is played on stage. It's like.
Well, yeah, so the thing, maybe the last thing to say is, like, we could have made this album 10 years ago. We could have made it 5 years ago. We could have made it 2 years ago. But I'm so glad we didn't, because everything seemed to just come together with Imogen and with Patrick and with the baby, and everything is...
It chose its time, basically. The album chose its own time. I always think of it almost as like a living, breathing thing. It's an album, sure, but it's more than that. It like exists in this world. It has feelings, and it chose its moment of birth.
Pre-planned in some way, but when it looks like an accident,